Hi guys, today we're going to do this female cardinal. I'm actually going to turn this light off. There's this reference photo is from a calendar. Don't know what year it was, but 2021. So there is a gloss finish to the paper, and I hope it's not going to provide too much of a glare for you. But anyway, we're good at just kind of doing our own thing anyway. So get your scrap piece of paper and a pen that you like that drops a little bit of ink, and then you can add more pressure and do some shading when needed. So lately I bought a box of these pens, the Bic round stick medium, and I think this was a 1.0, and they don't blotch. And actually I've been doing a lot of my work using black ink because I've been adding an ink wash to color up the work later on. I've been sketching on proper watercolor paper, not scrap paper. So anyway, that's why I splurged and spent $2.79 buying a box of pens. So anyway, just yeah, I think a lot of my videos are going to be in black ink from now on. It doesn't really matter what color you choose, just have it like not too blotchy and something that you can shade. So let's get going. I want you to pay attention to the angle of her body. She is oriented toward us. This is almost her full chest. Square on and a slight turn to the head. We know that she is oriented more toward us because we don't see much of her back and the side wing here. If she was facing out and perched, more like this on the branch, we'd see more of her bum and more of her back, and we don't. So yeah, there's that. And then the angle of her head, we pay attention to this V right here, and this V is the center of her face. And since we can see feathers on the other side of this V, we know that her head is oriented slightly toward us. So let's see if we can end up with a sketch where she's kind of looking at us and keeping an eye on us when we put her up on our wall. So let's just start at the top of the bill and choose a good place on your paper so that you don't get run out of space when you're putting in her body and stuff like that. I want to just do this V here, and we've got a sharp angle down on her bill, and then a little bit of a sharp angle toward the back. And it's better to overemphasize the angles, I think, at the outset, because what we can do is go, if we need to, we can go back and see this depth right there already. That depth isn't enough. I'm gonna actually, I think I want to actually take this down a little bit more. With the feathers around her face, and then the side of the bill, and then back in here, and we've got where the beak top meets the bottom. This is a slight downward angle, which we need to show that her face is kind of down. See, now I'm sure yours looks way better than this. Oh God. Okay, let's do the feathers around the side of her head and just keep these up, take these up a little bit. There's a slight curve here. I'm not finishing that. Okay, let's just have these feathers, dark part of her face, and here, and I just want to use her markings to try to keep us sort of like oriented properly where we go around her face. So see this here, this distance here. Let's just try to fill this in a little bit so we get a good placement for her eye. She's a little bit puffy because it's winter time and she's puffed up her feathers to stay warm. So that's an advantage for us, because if our proportions are all screwed up, we can just say, oh, it's not a winter day after all. Now let's try to, so what I'd like you to do is just have your, a slight amount of shading around the eye socket like this. And then I want you to leave a space, and we're going to shade in the black. We're going to leave this tissue here around the actual eyeball itself, and we're going to do a dark circle to outline the actual eyeball. And yes, I'm talking to myself because it's sort of like, okay, Elaine, make sure you leave a border around the eyeball so it's not a great big huge black mess. Though I have to say, there's some artists who really like to have very, very large eyes on their little birdie sketches. I'm sure you know where those channels are, and you go there after me. Okay, now I want you to pay attention to actually the color changes within the eyeball, and we're gonna bump up against this in later sketches, because if we focus on a larger bird or whatever, the camera does actually pick up more detail with what is going on in the eye. So since this is a larger eyeball, we've got reflection of the curve along the bottom, and we've got the highlight and the curve here, and the rest is black. So what I want you to do is just kind of like fake it. Just leave a white spot for this part in here, and I want you to color in with your pen the rest of the lens. And we're just going to leave these borders for now. We've got lots of other things to do. I've got big plans for us, you know, like if we end up doing like horse heads and larger animals and stuff like that, so we're kind of like going to be forced to actually pay closer attention to what is going on in the eyeball itself. Okay, well, that's enough of that. Now let's just very lightly shade some of these feathers around the top of her face, and this is a good opportunity for us to make some corrections and check our distances and change our angles and stuff. I want mine to be more upright. So there's a patch of kind of like lighter red feathers around her face and the eye and the eyebrow almost, and then they get a little bit darker. We're not going to take this up to the crest, not yet. It's too scary. But I just want to get a couple of areas marked off so we're a little bit more comfortable with our sizing and our distance as we're working around the sketch. Oh, and you know, I can tell already I'm doing another damn monster bird. I always try not to, but okay, well, I'm not allowed to start complaining like 2 minutes into the video. Let's just do the little black markings around her bill, down here a little bit. This is lighter gray. Let's go down to her chest and stuff. And this is actually her back, and these are the feathers underneath her throat. So let's carry this out a little bit further so we can kind of mark where we want to have. And turn your page, please. I shouldn't be so concerned about having mine just always properly oriented for you guys. It's the reference photo you need to be paying attention to, not me and what I'm doing. I just want to take this back a little bit. And then we're going to use this shading to see how far back we need to go, but to take it before we hit the back of her head, which is this area here. Now I want to do, we're doing these feathers here around her eye, and then see how her face, the end of her face feathers, create a break between these feathers and the feathers on her neck. So let's just see if we can get that curve in there as a bit of a border. Bring these in, and then she's got more feathers that come out here. Down her, further down her face, going into her chest. And then underneath that, we've got the darker feathers for the back of her neck. And here, let's see if I can take these out properly and create a kind of border that I like. And check your distance from the edge of her eye to the back of her head. And I've sort of got mine. I think I've kind of overshot the mark a little bit, but I'm just gonna leave it for now, and I'll fiddle with my angles later. Okay, now how about if we, since we're here, I just kind of want to blend this out a little bit better. This is a little bit darker, and then her, there are changes in the feathers around her face and the markings and stuff like that. None of which are visible on my sketch. Okay, I want to just start working down her chest, and if we look at the bottom of her bill and take that out, this is where these feathers kind of like end. I don't want to put the curve of her chest too high, and when it comes down a little bit more maybe. Now let's start just working on shading in these feathers on her chest. We're just going to take them down. I'm not going to worry too much about shading them in just yet, because what we want to do is have her, we can sort of work on this orangey red bib. just go like a little bit down, a little bit further. It's kicking my stool underneath the table. I'm not sure if I want to like tackle this part here just yet. I want to focus on getting this nice rounded curve to her chest and having the angle correct. And see how sharply this turns in? This is because this is her breast and her chest that is almost head-on facing us. We got some of the gray feathers here. And then I want to pull this in fairly sharply. And we're going to be mindful of how we place the branch, because the branch itself blocks a lot of her body. So when we have that in our sketch, we've got to make sure that we're happy with the way that we've sort of like shaded in her body and done that part of work before we put in the branch. So let's go over to this side of her body and start taking some of this down a little bit. I'm doing these grayer feathers here. I don't want to go down too far because there is quite the sharp angle here. So how about if we can figure out where we want to place this foot? Don't worry about the feathers here. Now, this foot is pretty much under her bill. And I'm trying to judge how much distance there is. Okay, well, let's just try putting in and you know, big heavy toes. The one that we can see is the first one. This is the middle toe. And I think it's fair that, I mean, if your proportions are all screwed up and then you're drawing like huge feet, huge toes, like, that's perfect. Who cares? You know, some of these birds have like monster toes and big claws anyway. So if that's the way your sketch turns out, so be it. Right? There's going to be lots of other stuff in the sketch that is probably, we got to put in this knot here because it covers like quite a bit of our body. We're not putting in this branch. We can fake it with these feathers here. But what I do want to do is take this down. What was I saying? Nothing important. Now, the leg is attaching to her body almost exactly where this branch is. There's a tiny little thing of feathers there. So I think what we need to do is, depending on the angle that you've done your branch, if let's just do some thinking here. If her leg has to come out that. And then we're gonna have, God, did I say that we were working on angles today? I meant to. Let's make things really difficult for ourselves and work on the angle of the toes. And then here we see more of the middle toe with the knuckle. Bumpy little tooties. Bottom pad and the claw coming out the top. And then the last toe. So when you're putting in your branch, just do whatever works best for the feet that you've drawn. Forget about the reference photo. Okay, so here what I want to do is this, my claw is probably like a little bit too long. I'm going to have that hanging off and make the branch a little bit thinner like that, and pull this down here. And it passes like that. So now what we have to do is, because the branch is a little bit thinner, for sure the long back toe is going to be coming around. We're definitely going to be able to see that. Okay, so we got to put that in. And same over here. So when I first started sketching, the feet were like so much trouble. It'd be like, oh my goodness, it would just be so much easier to put in a branch to block the toes and blah blah blah, and so that I just don't have to deal with it. It's too complicated. But I thought that's not exactly the way to learn. So I always force myself to figure out the toes and stuff like that. And then what's interesting is when you look at someone's artwork, you can totally tell when they have cheated and decided to not bother with the feet. They're just gonna like put a branch in instead, which is fine. Everybody's different, but you know, as I always say, like everything is so darn difficult anyway, we might as well force ourselves to do it, right? Okay, well that was agony. God, she's gonna look a lot cuter than this by the time I'm done. Okay, so we're not gonna worry about this. We can sort of figure it out, how her feathers come around. Now, have this angle sharp, okay? Because she is facing us. So don't take this down too much. It's gonna change her orientation. So what we want it to do is this, and then we want to have her back with this sharp angle coming down, these darker feathers, and her wing. We can make her thicker when we need to. But right now, I just want to see if we can figure out how to get in her bum feathers and tail and all that kind of stuff. So this tummy line, her tummy would come along here like this, see? So you have to do what's right for your sketch. And because you understand what you're working on, you can make the appropriate changes to fit what you're doing. Now I need to shut up for a second. Okay, so there's this little curve here, and then there's another little curve of bum feathers, and then, oh, it's the tail here that is changing that, and then it's a sharp angle up and out here. Okay, I'm getting all screwed up. Let me go back to the foot. So this curve here is going to be the back of her body, the bottom of her body. And then we've got tail feathers, the bum feathers that come down here like this. And there's a flare to her tail. Cardinals do have large tails, so let's just try to get some of these individual tail feathers in here, but not commit ourselves to the length of the tail just yet. What we want to do is put in the borders. Oh man, there's tons to do. Now the rescue mission begins. Okay, let's start by coloring up our chest a little bit. Not solid, but we just want to make sure that we've got the areas of the darker orangey red. And then the lighter curve of her tummy. So they're lighter on the tummy anyway. And then of course there's the angle and the lighting and all that kind of stuff as well. Okay, I still don't want to do her back because I want to make sure that I've sort of got this angle better. I don't want her to have too much of a twist. Make it a little darker above the foot where the feathers are sort of like displaced when the foot is coming out of her body. To sort of do have fairly good control with the shading on this pen, which is nice. Let's give ourselves a break and just shade in some of these tail feathers. It's all got to be done anyway. It's the tail feathers that we normally find. Okay, now I totally want to fix her face because it's just, let's go back up and just start working her over. So I think by now you probably have the basic placement of her features, and you can just start by adding your shading and getting some contrasts in there, and let's see if we can end up with a sketch that is acceptable for showing somebody. It's questionable right now, but give me time. I'm not done. I don't want to have things solid around her eye. We're just gonna like put in a little bit of shading here and there, and we're gonna fix this up and tone it down and stuff, and reduce the borders. She's doesn't look like she's glaring at us. Let's change the angles a little bit more contour around here, underneath. So this is where, it's kind of convenient having a pen that you can control the amount of ink that it's dropping, so you don't have like really, really dark areas. It should be a little bit lighter. And then, if you go too dark in certain spots, then you've got to go back and change the contrast again. What do I want to do? I do want to do the shading where the feathers are kind of like all facing in the right direction. I have a bit more of a distinction between her face feathers here. And then these here that lead into the change of her chest, the curvature there. And some shadow under her bill. And now let's see if we can tackle this, which is the rest of her chest. And then her back. to get rid of this line that was a mistake when I started. A line that was a mistake. Oh my God, that can apply to almost like everything that I've done here. I just have to shade her out a little bit more underneath the bill. Well, that's all right. And then, you know, like, I don't know, I don't want to say as usual, but for me it is as usual. Like, what I end up sketching is just so far away from what the reference photo looks like that you kind of have to reach that point where you just have to work with what you've done and fix it so that the proportions, the shading and whatnot are appropriate for your own sketch, and just using the reference photo as a guide to actually understanding what's going on with the sketch. So I am doing her quite a bit smaller than, not quite a bit smaller, a little bit smaller than the reference. So, I don't know, I just want to, and you know, if my angles are wrong and blah, 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 if the branch isn't that wide, then I have to just finish my sketch in a way that makes sense for what I've laid down. Gosh, that sounds like just another big bloody excuse for myself. We can always make the branch wider. See? Instead of just using the branch to hide the feet, I'm using the branch to hide the entire body. How about that? Okay, so they do have long tails, but remember, let's pay attention to her angle, right? Because the tail can be like elevated, it can be down as a brace, as a counterbalance, I mean. So let's not get too carried away. Let's pay attention to some of our shading. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about the crest. Does anybody want to come over and do that for me? Okay, a little darker around there and there. Maybe let's just have a little bit more contrast with the red. certain patches. When in doubt, increase the contrast. Oh, we have to do the branch as well. See, they do have a nice burgundy to their legs, so make sure you do have some. What's going on with this toe? This toe faces us almost exactly, so we can't really see too much of it. Oh, and that's like the wrist. Okay. This toe is dark underneath. Let's make sure. I mean, I don't think they need like a lot of shading in, but as long as they don't get lost in the other details that you've put in. I want to kind of like increase her, the knobbies on the top of her foot there. Ruffle the feathers where the leg's coming out from her chest. Okay. Now, how do we want to do this crest? Because this, we really want to maintain this kind of angle that goes up. Let's just take up some of the shading. Because I know nobody has an eraser. And nobody's doing this in pencil. So we don't want to go up too high. Let's just go slowly, take this up a little bit. Add to it if we need to. And then we can alter the angle of her face. I'll have this a little bit smoother. Now, I want you checking this angle here that goes from the top of her head to the back of her neck, into her neck, and stuff like that, and see if you're happy with what you've done there. And if not, just take out the shading a little bit for these head feathers. And see how smooth it is here? On mine, it's not. So I want to maybe take her chest out a little bit more so that that angle looks a bit better. And remember, you know, like they puff their feathers up when it's cold, right? So everything's a go. But what we do want to show is a little bit of a break between her neck feathers and where her chest curves out. And so if you need to puff her out a little bit more, like I do, that's totally fair and a good go. Oh, I like this angle better, that's for sure. Don't shade in her tummy, don't get too carried away. Keep the color on her chest. There's quite a bit of gray around her face and under her throat. Well, you know, like it's the lighting as well, right? And every bird is different. So honestly, if you want to blacken that up to give more contrast, just make sure you leave this small gray patch, because that's a fairly common feature and characteristic. But we can sort of like pick up the contrast a little bit around her face. It's our sketch, right? And do you like the eye that you've done? I ended up changing my angles quite a bit because I was trying to mimic like the teardrop stuff and it didn't really work, so I had to change some of those, like shade in different parts of it to take off the scowl. Next time we need a break, we're going to shade the branch. And did you remember to put the contrast in on the crest feathers? Not all the way to the ends because they thin out, right? So we're going to have some light breaking through those. And the kind of like grayish shading, coloring, it does sort of creep up the back of her neck and the back of her head and stuff. So we can just sort of make sure we capture that by adding some contrast there. Okay, so this is more like, I made this like a little bit too dark, but I just want to have some, can show where some of these face feathers are breaking from her neck and her back and stuff like that. And then just in small patches, randomly, you can just add some of these darker red parts. haven't spent too much time on this side of the body, so I just want to, let's take her coloring down a little bit closer to the branch. Where there's a little bit more of this orangey shading. And then her brighter bum that we're going to leave alone because we don't want to lose that contrast with what we're doing. Okay, so do you have a good angle with her chest here? Pushing her chest out. And then with the body, see, if I started filling this in here, it would completely change her angle. So what I want to do is just like sort of darken her, the parts of her back here. This is more of the gray. I do feel like all this part right here is buggered up. And thank you very much for saying that's not the only part of the sketch that's buggered up. Well aware, well aware. I just want to have some very, very, very discreet shading on these bum feathers, and then I want to have a sharp border where the tail feathers are bumping up to them. See, there's very good control with these big pens. I actually sent an email to the company and said that that's what I use for my sketching. And no, I don't want anything and blah, blah, blah. I'm not asking for freebies or whatever. They weren't interested. Just said, oh, thanks for letting us know. The only people who care about me are you guys. So, thanks for that. Are you ready to shade in the branch? Fun part. I'm just trying to decide if you know, I just want to take a chance and change this angle a smidge. Okay, so she's being, the light is capturing her here and stuff and on her bum. The branch is bark and it's kind of like decayed anyway. So you know what, bottom line is, it doesn't really matter what we do. So let's just do our bark and some texture to the branch and very lightly shade the top part of it. Not a whole bunch, all right? Let's do that knot and some texture around that. And then we can, oh, come on. Is this like not even, here we go. Let's shade the bottom of our branch a little bit heavier than the top. Just so that we've got that idea of a little bit more contrast between her bum and the branch. And there's always going to be like shading around the toes, okay, where the claws are coming over the top and stuff. Her body as well will be casting a bit of a shadow. Shade out that knot. And this also helps us with our pen control, right? So whether it's pen control or brush or, you know, ink and stuff, our pointed pen with our calligraphy or whatever, it all comes down to the feel of what we're working with and how to control it. So I think it's all kind of useful. There. Look, even the sunshine is shining on her. I don't know, that's not too bad. It's not too bad. I don't think I really want to do anything else. So I hope you like your sketch. And if you don't, start again, right? If you can stand it. Okay. Thank you so much for your company. I'll see you next time.